Michael Jordan was more than a basketball player. He was a force of nature, a competitor whose mindset and killer instinct elevated him above not only his peers but almost anyone who has ever played a sport. His legacy is not built merely on dunks, scoring titles, or championships. It is built on an unwavering psychological edge, an aura that made opponents crumble before the game even started. To study Michael Jordan is to study the anatomy of competitiveness itself, the science of a man who believed so deeply in victory that he made it a reality over and over again. His story is as much about his mental toughness as it is about his athletic talent, and it is in that rare intersection where his greatness becomes eternal. Jordan's early years shaped the fire that would burn in him forever. Growing up in North Carolina, he was constantly competing with his siblings, especially his older brother Larry, who often beat him in one-on-one games. Those defeats ignited something in young Michael. They were not moments of discouragement, but of transformation, forcing him to dig deeper, to outwork everyone, and to find a mental edge that became the foundation of his greatness. The now famous tale of him being cut from his high school varsity team was not the end of his dream but the beginning of his obsession. Instead of sulking, Jordan used rejection as fuel, spending endless hours in the gym, turning doubt into discipline. From the very start, his response to failure was not to retreat but to attack. That mindset would define his entire career. At the University of North Carolina, under the guidance of Dean Smith, Jordan's mental poise began to shine. Most young players would have been overwhelmed by the spotlight of a national championship game, but Jordan thrived on it. In 1982, as a freshman, he calmly sank the game-winning jumper against Georgetown, a moment that foreshadowed his lifelong ability to perform under the brightest lights. He was not just fearless, he was comfortable in chaos, steady in pressure, and eager for the moments that left others trembling. From the beginning, it was clear, Jordan didn't just play basketball. He conquered it mentally before ever stepping on the court. When he entered the NBA in 1984 with the Chicago Bulls, the league was already full of stars, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and a host of others. But Jordan stood out for one reason. He wanted to dominate every single night, regardless of the stage, the opponent, or the circumstance. His rookie season was electric, not only because of his high-flying dunks but because of the way he imposed his will on games. Teammates and opponents alike recall his unshakable confidence. He didn't just believe he would win, he expected to win, and that expectation infected everyone around him. He was relentless, demanding, and often unforgiving, but his killer instinct made him both feared and revered. The battles against the Detroit Pistons in the late 1980s remain a vivid illustration of his psychological toughness. The bad boys used brutal physicality to try and break him, knocking him to the floor, punishing him every time he drove to the basket. Many players would have cracked under that pressure, but Jordan responded by transforming his body and sharpening his focus. He studied the Pistons, learned their tactics, and returned stronger, both physically and mentally. By 1991, he broke through them, leading the Bulls to their first championship. That triumph was more than a victory on the court. It was a victory of willpower, a demonstration that no obstacle, no matter how punishing, could derail him. Once Jordan reached the top, his hunger only grew. The 1990s belonged to him not because he was the most talented player, but because he was the most ruthless competitor. His killer instinct drove the Bulls to 2 separate three-peats, 6 championships in total, and a legacy that still casts a shadow over the league. Jordan lived for the big moments, and when the game was on the line, his calm intensity never wavered. He thrived on pressure, relished it, and demanded it. Whether it was the shot over Craig Ello in 1989, his legendary 63-point performance against the Boston Celtics in 1986, or his iconic game-winning jumper against the Utah Jazz in 1998, Jordan's legacy is written in moments where pressure would have crushed most athletes, but for him, pressure was the fuel. Jordan's killer instinct was not limited to games, it was embedded in his everyday life. Teammates often described practices as more intense than actual games. He demanded perfection, accountability, and effort from everyone around him, often clashing with players who could not meet his standard. Yet this intensity was not cruelty, it was his way of instilling his mindset into others. He believed championships were not won on game nights but in the unseen hours of preparation, the relentless pursuit of excellence every single day. It is no coincidence that those who survived his demanding nature, like Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, Steve Kerr, and others, emerged as tougher, more resilient players. Jordan didn't just want to win himself, he wanted to drag everyone with him into the fire. His mentality extended beyond basketball into his personal battles. The tragic murder of his father in 1993 was a devastating blow, one that led him to step away from basketball. But even in grief, Jordan's response was to challenge himself in a new arena: professional baseball. While his baseball career was short-lived, the courage it took to attempt such a transition speaks to his refusal to fear failure. When he returned to basketball in 1995, he was not the same player physically, but mentally, he was sharper than ever. The second three-peat, from 1996 to 1998, cemented his place not only as the greatest player of his generation but as a psychological giant who could bend the game to his will. Consider the 1997 Finals, Game 5, the legendary flu game. Battling illness, dehydrated, and visibly weak, Jordan summoned the mental strength to score 38 points and lead the Bulls to victory. That performance was not about athleticism, it was about sheer willpower, a refusal to let weakness dictate his destiny. Similarly, in the 1998 Finals, with the score tied in Game 6, he calmly stole the ball from Karl Malone, dribbled up the court, and hit the iconic jumper over Brian Russell. That shot was not just the end of an era, it was the ultimate display of confidence, control, and psychological dominance. Jordan's killer instinct extended into his business ventures as well. His partnership with Nike and the creation of the Air Jordan brand revolutionized sports marketing, blending competition, culture, and identity. He didn't just endorse products, he turned them into symbols of excellence, making Air Jordans a global phenomenon. His influence spread far beyond basketball courts, inspiring musicians, actors, and leaders who admired not only his success but the mentality behind it. The phrase, "Be like Mike," wasn't just a slogan, it was an aspiration to think like him, to compete like him, to never settle for less than greatness. Even after his final retirement in 2003, Jordan's competitive spirit has remained evident in his role as an NBA owner and businessman. His decisions, his investments, and his continued influence in the game reflect the same mentality he had as a player: strategic, driven, and uncompromising. What he left behind was more than statistics, championships, or accolades. He left behind a blueprint for greatness rooted in mindset. Every athlete who has come after him, from Kobe Bryant, who mirrored his mentality, to today's stars like LeBron James, Stephen Curry, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, has in some way chased the standard of mental toughness Jordan set. Michael Jordan's killer instinct is why his legacy is immortal. He showed the world that greatness is not an accident, it is a choice, repeated daily, lived relentlessly, and demanded endlessly. He taught us that the mind is as powerful as the body, that belief fuels performance, and that pressure is not to be feared but embraced. His story is one of dominance, yes, but also of discipline, focus, and the kind of confidence that bends reality. He didn't just change the NBA, he changed how we define success, competitiveness, and even human potential. In the end, Michael Jordan's career is not just about 6 championships or endless highlight reels. It is about the psychology of a man who refused to lose, who treated every game, every practice, every moment as a battle to be won. His killer instinct is his true legacy, the fire that will never burn out. To study Michael Jordan is to study greatness itself, distilled into its purest form, an unshakable belief that victory is always possible, and that anything less is unacceptable. And so, as we close this tribute to Michael Jordan, the man whose killer instinct became legend, thank you for joining us on this journey through his life and mindset. If his story of mental toughness and competitive fire inspired you, let it be a reminder in your own battles that the greatest victories begin in the mind. If you felt his legacy move you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with others who need to remember what true greatness looks like, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, subscribe so you never miss more stories like this, because the legend of Michael Jordan will always remind us that with focus, belief, and relentless willpower, nothing is impossible.